This is a Fujifilm X-T1. Precisely, this is my Fujifilm X-T1, which I've recently purchased. Yes, the year is 2021 and I've purchased a camera that was released back in 2014. Bear with me as I try and explain to you or reason to you why I've actually purchased a Fujifilm X-T1 in 2021. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Rowan. So yes, the year is 2021 and I have recently purchased a Fujifilm X-T1, a camera that was released back in 2014. So let me give you a bit of a backstory. I've been curious about the Fujifilm cameras for quite some time now, and I've wanted to get into the Fujifilm family, but I wasn't fully convinced and I wasn't willing to go the whole route that everybody seems to take, where they dump all their old gear or they sell off all their old gear and do the full switch. So I wanted to dip my toes in to the Fujifilm line of cameras, but I really wasn't ready to fully commit. I wasn't ready to get rid of all my gear, all my Canon gear, and fully commit into the Fujifilm. And I knew even if I borrowed a camera or even if I rented out a camera for a couple of days, it would still not be enough to convince me to change over from Canon over to Fuji. But I was really curious about the whole Fuji cameras. I wanted to try them, I wanted to get into the cameras, and I just wanted the whole experience of them because I've been curious about them for quite some time. So I eventually looked around and I looked at all the entry-level Fuji cameras that they had brand new, and I looked at the used market, and then a Fujifilm X-T1, this one, actually came up on Gumtree, which is a second-hand used listing in South Africa. So I found one which was this one came up, which was very affordable. So I thought, I've got nothing to lose, I'll buy the camera. If I don't really like it, I haven't lost a lot of money. If I do like it, then I can, maybe that'll be my first step into the Fuji line of cameras. But I've had the camera now for 6 months and I've used it quite a bit, and I've really enjoyed using the camera, which is why I actually took the step, or I took the decision to actually make this video, because I thought maybe it might help somebody who was in the same predicament as me. So here are a couple of reasons why I think in 2021 the Fujifilm X-T1 is still a fantastic little camera. Reason number one for me is the price. The price of this camera is ridiculously cheap. Normally you would say affordable, but I will actually say that this camera is very cheap. Very cheap in terms of what you get for what you pay. This is a lot of camera for what you get. These cameras go in the South African used market anywhere from 2,500 Rand to about 4,000 or 5,000 Rand, which for that price point and the amount of camera that you get for that price point, it's actually unbelievable. These cameras, a Fujifilm X-T1 second hand in 2021, is a steal of a camera. It's a very good deal. By actually saying it's cheap for what you get, it's actually unbelievable, because if you think about it, this is still, or this even back in the day in 2014, I know it's a couple of years going back, but this was Fujifilm's top of the range camera. This was Fujifilm's top line camera. Nowadays they've got the X-T4, which is their top of the range camera. This was the equivalent to that back in the day. In 2014, this was Fujifilm's top camera. So that doesn't make it a bad camera, even though it's 7-8 years old. This camera's still got a very modern 16 megapixel sensor. I won't go through all the specs of it, but it can shoot to speeds all the way up to 4,000th of a second. It's a mirrorless camera. It's got Wi-Fi, it's got a articulating screen, even though it's not a full articulating screen, but it still does moving around. So for the amount of money that you're paying, this really is a lot of camera, and it's a fully sealed weather body. So this camera can withstand a lot of dust, can withstand a little bit of water, and it's just, for the price what you get, I think this is a ridiculously good bargain in 2021. And the camera that I bought, or this camera that I bought, came with 2 batteries and a battery grip, which is what people do. We are fortunate in 2021 because a lot of people are just wanting to get rid of gear for the latest amount of gear, which means a lot of second-hand gear is actually quite at a bargain. So I really think that this camera, for the price point, what you get, or for what these cameras go for secondhand, this is a very, very cheap and good bargain. Secondly, what I like about this camera is what I call the feel or the aesthetics of this camera. Fujifilm has always been, I remember when these cameras first came out, I had just purchased a brand new 6D in 2013, Canon 6D, and I had a couple of friends that actually bought two X-T1s and an X-T100. I don't know if it was the S or the 100T, one of those, and I'm primarily being a film shooter, I always, thought that Fujifilm was really looking at the design of how the old film SLRs are built and how the old film cameras are built. And I've never held one in my entire shooting career. I've seen people with them, but I've never held one in my hands up until I went to pick up this camera. And I must admit, the feel and the aesthetics of this camera, as somebody that primarily shoots with a lot of old school film cameras, this camera makes me feel like I'm holding one of them. The dials, it's got a lot of bare metal. The body's got a lot of metal, so it's got that cold feeling to it, which I personally, I love it. All the settings you can change on a quick dial like you would do on a normal film camera is just something that draws me to the camera even more. When I have the camera on the shelf and I see it displayed on the shelf, it just inspires me to pick the camera up all the time and use it. It looks good, it feels good, so it inspires me. As stupid as it sounds, it inspires me to pick the camera up most of the time. So I've extensively shot with this camera for the past 6 months, and I really am enjoying the experience of using it. The other reason that I really like about this camera, which is something that did push me into it, is because this camera is a mirrorless camera. Lens adaptability of this camera is phenomenal, or it's fantastic. As somebody that shoots a lot of film, I naturally collect a lot of film cameras, and a lot of film cameras have all sorts of interesting lenses from back in the 60s, the 70s, all different types of lenses. And with mirrorless cameras, because these cameras don't have the little mirror flap of a conventional SLRs, it makes them easy to adapt vintage lenses. Like I've got at the moment this Pentax Pancake 40mm f2.8 lens, which comes from one of my Pentax SLRs, and with a little adapter I've adapted it to this, and it still doesn't have a big form factor. It's still a very nice sizable display thing, and it gives me a very good quality lens. I haven't purchased any Fujifilm native lenses since I got this camera, because I have got a lot of Pentax lenses which I've got an adapter to adapt, and I use those. And for manual focusing, it's just absolutely fantastic. And why I wanted to bring up the lens adaptability point when it comes to why you'd want to consider this camera is because not only is just the physical mounting of the lenses much easier on these old mirrorless cameras, is the fact that the technology that is inside this camera, it makes using an old manual focus lens like this brilliant, because it's got focused assist technology inside it, which is basically you've got options like a split prism finder or a split view finder, where you've got the main picture and then you've got a little square on the corner or on the side of the image which is magnified where you are actually focusing on, which makes manual focusing 10 times easier. Or you can opt for an option that is called focus peaking. I had never seen this technology in effect up until I got this camera, but basically it takes a scene, or the scene that you're looking through your viewfinder, whatever's in focus gets highly contrasted with black or red or blue or white pixels depending on what your setting is, which makes manual focusing next level. Like literally it makes manual focusing so much easier. I have not found the need to purchase an autofocus lens because, one, I've got a lot of Pentax lenses that actually are very good lenses and I enjoy using them on this, but I just haven't had the need to buy an autofocus lens because I haven't fully committed to investing into an autofocus lens. I'm still really enjoying this camera as a personal camera. I haven't used it as a workhorse. I still have my Canon gear, which I am contemplating, or I am strongly deciding, I think I'm going to do the switch. I'm going to get rid of all my Canon gear and fully invest into one of Fujifilm's newer bodies, precisely one that can possibly shoot video and replace one of my main video cameras here that I use for work and for personal use as well. Literally, lens adaptability is the other reason that, or is the other point that I think has just made me want to discuss with this camera after using it. I'm just impressed at how the technology, focus peaking, manual focus assist technology in this camera is, and the ability to use all my wonderful vintage lenses. I've got another Minolta adapter, and I'm looking at purchasing an FD adapter for this as well, so I can broaden the amount of lenses that I can use with this camera that I already own. And then the final point that I want to discuss about this camera is the most important point of it all, is image quality. You know, even though this camera is 7-8 years old, don't be fooled by that. And the sensor, it's got a 16 megapixel sensor, and it is just absolutely phenomenal. Hand on heart, I can just attest and say that the images that come out of this camera, either RAW or JPEG, are just absolutely gorgeous files. I really am blown away at the quality of the images that this camera produces, even though it's a 7-year-old camera. And let's not fool each other, but a 7-year-old camera should definitely be producing very good cameras. Cameras 7 years ago were flippant good still. So this camera produces magnificent images. But what really gets my juices going is, I never knew about something that they call Fuji simulations. So this camera has got built-in sort of presets, or built-in color presets, that they call Fuji simulations, which basically simulate different film stocks and different looks. It just creates these magnificent colors. You know, people always talk about the Fuji colors, and people always talk about Fuji's color science, which I think is absolutely fantastic. You know, ever since I started using this camera, I've just found myself shooting more and more JPEGs, not needing to want to edit my JPEGs much. I still do have the option, or I still do shoot JPEG and RAW, so that I do have a RAW file that I can back up and always go to that if I wanted to do some further in-depth editing with it. But I'm seldomly finding myself shooting or using the RAW files more for what I do. I just am really enjoying the JPEGs. On top of the Fujifilm simulation, there are what they call Fuji recipes, which is basically custom profiles or custom settings that you can add onto that, or you can create based off of those Fuji simulations, which then even mimic more film stocks. These Fuji recipes can be found online. There's different blogs and there's different creators out there that are busy constantly, you know, tweaking and just adding more recipes and playing with settings and creating these beautiful combination of settings to mimic either a certain film or a particular look. If you go onto the internet and you look up Fuji X Weekly, it's a very good resource for all these presets, or you can get the app for your phone, either Apple or Android, and over there you can find and choose all these different Fuji recipes and all these, you know, examples of what people have done with these, what other creators have done with these recipes. And you can either base your own style off of that, or you can copy the exact same, or you can take the exact same settings, input them onto that, and see how that works for you. I've just really enjoyed those Fuji recipes and the JPEGs that are coming out of these Fuji recipes and these Fuji simulations. You know, as somebody that primarily shoots a lot of film for personal work, I have just always found myself, when I was still shooting, or when I shoot with my digital Canon cameras, I'd spend a lot of time in post-processing, trying to make my photos have that film aesthetic, have that film look, you know, that it's just a vibe that goes with me, and I've always tried so hard, and I've just found it so much easier now. Some of the JPEGs that come from these Fuji recipes and these Fuji simulations, I found no need to edit. You know, I shoot it and I'm just blown away by just looking at the back of the screen, and when I enjoy that, I just transfer that photo straight away from the Fuji camera onto my phone and I can post it straight away with no major edits, and I'm happy with the results. So this camera, one of the biggest reasons you'd want to get one, especially if you're somebody that likes those photos that look like film photos, or you just like that film aesthetic look to your photos. Fuji, nobody I think does Fuji or film looking colors better than what Fuji does. I really think that, you know, even though this camera is 7 years old, it's a brilliant camera, and the images that come out of this camera are just absolutely gorgeous. So, you know, I've mentioned all these points, and you know, I really only use this camera as a stills camera, and I must disclose that this is a camera that I haven't really used for professional work, but I'm definitely sure it would cut it if you were somebody looking for a camera to maybe start doing some professional work, or a beginner. As a beginner camera, this is a fantastic camera for somebody that would be wanting to get into it. Or if you were in the same position as I was and you wanted to just put your toes into the Fuji line of cameras without breaking the bank too much, you know, it is a good starting point looking at one of Fuji's X-T1 cameras or one of their older models, because they are still very good cameras and they are still going to offer you a lot of features before you fully commit into going on to that. And you know, the final verdict for me is, even though this camera is 7 years old, it's a flippin' good camera. There's no beating around the bush there's no beating around the bush about it. This is a very good camera, even though it's 7 years old. I know I've said it so many times now, but for what you get, this is a very good camera, and there are very few things I can fault with this camera. Maybe the video functions on it it doesn't have the best of video specs, so I don't even bother using it for that. And it's been my personal camera for the last 6 or so months now. I've taken it all over the place, and I just love the fact that this camera, even though it's a top spec camera, it's such a small and compact camera. I can just put it in my bag and put on a small lens like this, and I know I'm going to come back with very good images while still enjoying the shooting experience of it. Using this camera has nothing been short of pleasant. So if you were maybe considering an X-T1 in 2021, I will say this, if you are considering this camera in 2021, this is a brilliant camera. You will not be disappointed. The images that come out of this camera are absolutely beautiful. The camera is very well made, and it still holds its own in 2021. So if you are looking at this camera, I would definitely recommend, fullest of recommendations. If you have enjoyed this video, thank you for watching. If you are new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more of my content. Thank you for the guys that have subscribed to the channel, and I have reached 500 subscribers, my first 500 subscribers. I appreciate you guys so much. I am going to be making more and more content. I've had some personal hiccups, but I'm not going to get into that. So I have overcome a lot of things, and I am committed to start making videos on a regular basis. Thank you again for watching this video. Please, if you have enjoyed this video, or you do know somebody that this video would help, please recommend it onto them. Give this video a thumbs up, comment down below, and I will see you guys on the next video. Cheers, enjoy.